How many times do we attempt to have a conversation with our loved ones, with our partners, and it doesn't go the way we thought it was going to go? And somewhere in the conversation there's friction or there's challenges that arises, and then the connection just doesn't happen. And deep down, isn't it what we're really looking for is to feel closer to the ones that we love and the people we care so much about in our lives? I want to invite us to pay attention to the way we actually choose to interact, and that there is a way to interact where it truly is prioritizing the connection. Think of oftentimes maybe when you sit with your partner. I want to give you a different way of approaching, let's say, a conversation, and what it would look like to first focus on connection. First, imagine telling yourself in advance that you're going to pretend to be Pat, let's say. It's just a made-up name, but that Pat's job is to listen to your partner, to listen from a place of, oh, I want to know what your experience is like. I truly am curious, and I actually want to know what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. And as you listen, notice, especially when you hear your name or when you hear your partner start talking about you and what you did or did not do, or how they believe that you're affecting their reality. Those are the moments that are very important to remind yourself and just breathe and imagine if you're Pat and you're listening from the perspective, oh, I really am interested in your experience. I want to know what's happening for you. I often, with my partner, I'm able to listen from a perspective of, oh, this is the experience that you're naming, not so much, oh, attaching blame, oh, she's talking about me and now I have to fix this problem, I have to fix this situation, or I have to change myself, or what I did wasn't not acceptable. All these different variations of what my monkey mind is making. Following those kind of thoughts doesn't lead me to experiencing more connection. So as you're focusing on this idea that you're listening as if you were a third person, it leads you to be more compassionate, to be more attentive to your partner's experience. And notice that what I'm suggesting here doesn't mean that we're not going to address what the partner is bringing up, because there might be some real issues that need to be dealt with or situations that need to be addressed. And yes, those will get addressed. What I'm suggesting is that when the connection within the nervous system and the emotional body is anxiety and it's filled with friction, it's really challenging to come to be on the same page to resolve anything or to address any issues that we're dealing with. But when we feel heard, seen, accepted, something different happens. The nervous system calms down. And this is what I'm suggesting, that we learn to pay attention to the nervous system. And that requires us to feel safe enough to not be reactive, but truly wanting connection with our partners. The other thing that's important to notice is that we're not there to have an agenda about the conversation. Because if you walk in there and you already know what you need to say or what you need to do, or anticipate what your partner might say, and you're going to have a reason or an explanation, notice that's not connection. Connection is something that requires us to connect with sometimes uncomfortable moments inside of us, and being able to notice how there's a tendency to not trust that experience or a tendency not to feel safe. And it doesn't mean either that when your partner is sharing with you that you don't acknowledge how you're feeling. What I'm suggesting is that you first take a step towards connection and being able to acknowledge your partner's experience and say, oh, I can hear that this is challenging for you. And an important aspect of creating the connection is to pay attention to the stories that the partner says or the stories that you might be coming up with. And it's not about buying into the stories. For example, let's say your partner was even saying something about one of the kids and that it's really hard because the kid is not responding or just keeps ignoring the partner. And the partner is saying, my kid doesn't really love me or accept me or want me in their lives. And in those moments of distress, that might be the story. And it's really helpful to be able to reflect to your partner and acknowledge the story without buying into the belief. And that can be done very simply by saying something like, oh, I see that she hasn't been responding to you, and that's really challenging. You're struggling with that. Yeah, that makes sense. Not, oh, she doesn't love you or she doesn't accept you. That's a different thing. There's a way that we can listen where we're not buying into the story, but we're listening to the heart and the core of what your partner is saying. And then at some point, it's also important to communicate what you're experiencing. And notice that if you go into any aspect of what was said where you're trying to justify, you're trying to explain the situation or fix the problem or talk about the reason why this happened, again, that's not conducive to connection. Connection is if your partner during the conversation had said that they were frustrated because you consistently don't do enough around the house, let's say, or around the property or do your share of work, where it's about noticing the feeling that it brought up in you and communicating that. What that might look like is saying, I noticed when you were talking about how I don't do enough around the house, I started getting irritated initially, and then I noticed that what's actually happening is I got scared. I got scared that somehow I'm not doing enough or I'm not okay, and somehow it's like the last thing I want to do is being a disappointment to you. And even as I say it out loud, that sounds kind of silly because I know, but it's somehow I still had that fear inside of me. Can you notice now the partner gets to know what you're experiencing? This isn't about justifying or explaining. You notice what creates connection. Connection is something we have to initially be disciplined to focus on because we have such a default way of being, which is going back or constantly following the mind that just keeps wanting to talk about the situation or the person, and then we get lost because we're not really present with what's happening. The next time you enter a conversation with a close one, try this on. Just remind yourself, I'm going to try this for a minute. I'm going to try to be Pat, and I'm going to be genuinely interested. I want to know at all costs what this person is experiencing. And I'm going to help them validate this experience, not by validating the story, but validating their true experience. And see what it feels like to be that present with the person that I love. Thank you for spending this time with me. This podcast is meant to be more than just information. If there's one thing I've learned over the years is that we are wired for connection. And if we are to learn the skills of living beyond this monkey mind that can be so overwhelming, it's best to do it together. And for that purpose, we've created groups. We call them pods, and we name them Aviv La Vie, which means live life to the fullest. Come and join us.